What's good, YouTube? What's good, man? I just got finished recording the video, and I seen my boy Mason over at Flock just dropped the video. Let's check it out together because I haven't watched it yet, so you can get my live reaction. Let's go! As you see, it's the title that already got me. It already suckered me in. History says these 4 rookie wide receivers are busts. I'm already hooked. I don't know who you do your titles, but I'm already in. You already got me suckered in. Let's get on with these 15 minutes. I'm ready.
I can tell you now that the analytics crowd, the metrics crowd, they are going to hate these 4 wide receivers. Now, of course, there are wide receivers that have been hated on by the analytics people in the past, such as Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey last year, where 1, I guess you can say they got it right with Mitchell. 2, they got it wrong with Ladd McConkey. And the big thing that I want to be identifying with the players that we're talking about in this video in particular is I want to be not just stopping at the...
Look, I'm not gonna keep pausing the video, but first, look here. I was not on Mitchell at all. Like, I laughed at the people that's on Mitchell. People slowed down by the time, after the NFL draft happened. I guess they was looking for him to get first round draft capital. But McConkey, I just wasn't 100% sure about. He was more so of a tough subject, but once he did what he did, then I was like, okay, then I should have gave him the badge that I thought he deserved, and I rectified things. But let's get it.
The overall yardage totals. Because if you look at Ladd McConkey at Georgia, he was never hyper productive, right? I mean, you can make an argument that he never really broke out. He never was the alpha wide receiver one in his offense from a totals perspective. But the saving grace with Ladd McConkey and why you couldn't completely write him off was if you looked at the advanced side of things with his yards per route run, actually did flash. On the other hand, a player like Adonai Mitchell did absolutely nothing at Texas, never really showed anything from a metrics perspective. If you looked at his yards per route run, I believe it was under 2, and we had never seen a wide receiver going into the NFL finding success with that profile. This was a very easy spot to say, okay, yeah, Adonai Mitchell, no interest, cannot draft him under any circumstance. Now, the wide receiver I want to lead us off with will be Jaden Higgins. Now, there are a couple issues with Jaden Higgins. 1, people aren't going to like the fact that you don't really technically get the breakout until his junior season. Obviously, we mainly just want to be looking at what happened at Iowa State. But 2, the main thing is he was never the dominant alpha in his own offense.
Man, I was about to get comfortable. And then they missing Jaden Higgins. Look, I'm already tell you right now, Jaden Higgins is probably not going to produce his first season. Jaden Higgins remind me of, if y'all love Cedric Tillman, then he kind of like that. He kind of like Cedric Tillman. I'm guessing Jaden Higgins is not. Now, if Jaden Higgins gets second round draft capital, it's on and popping, but I've never seen a mock draft giving him that. So Jaden Higgins is going to be more so probably drafted in the 4th round. And if you are a fan of Cedric Tillman, Michael Wilson, then you a fan of Higgins. Otherwise, and both of them didn't do anything year 1. So that's the path you're probably going down.
Offense. If you're looking at the market share numbers, you actually only have 23.7% of his career routes earning a target, which is going to be a very low metric. You'll see in a second. And also, if you're looking at his yards per route run, his career mark is 2.24. Breakout age breaks out as a junior. And if we go ahead and if we actually look at wide receivers that were not round 1 NFL draft picks, there's no way this dude's going to be a round 1 NFL pick, that broke out either late in their sophomore year or in their junior season, that had fewer than 25% of their routes earning a target and fewer than 2.5 yards per route run through their career. This is the list over on flockfantasy.com. Obviously, you can check out all this stuff on the prospects page on the site. But you have Jalen Polk, massive bust, or at least looks like one so far. Jonathan Mingo, massive bust, or at least looks like one so far. John Mechie, don't want to blame it on him. He had cancer. Dante Pettis, massive bust. Chase Claypool, pretty big bust. Adonai Mitchell, we knew, stay away from him last year. Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, DK Metcalf, Velus Jones, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Joshua Palmer, Ardarius Stewart, Jermaine Burton, Diami Brown, Roman Wilson, Amari Rogers, Devin Duvernay, and Jalen McMillan. There was one guy on this list that was the difference-making player in fantasy football, and that was DK Metcalf.
He skipped over Jalen McMillan because Jalen McMillan went off at the end of last year.
DK Metcalf had one wide receiver one season through his NFL career, maybe as a resurgence, extremely late at this point. But a very interesting note with DK Metcalf is Metcalf actually played at Ole Miss with A.J. Brown. DK Metcalf also had injury concerns at Ole Miss, so it's very difficult to look at him as a prospect. And now this is going to be a continued trend that we actually have here, specifically with Jaden Higgins. Because if you go through and if you actually look at the raw numbers of this Iowa State offense, it's not like Jaden Higgins didn't have another NFL caliber talent playing alongside him. Now, I don't know if Jalen Noel is going to be A.J. Brown. That is definitely something that we are going to have to wait to see. But Jalen Noel actually led this team in receiving yards. He did play an extra game. But what's going to be interesting to note here is if you go over and look at NFL mock draft database, they currently have Jaden Higgins going as a mid-third round pick and Jalen Noel being a fourth round pick in this year's NFL draft. Now, I'm definitely going to be more willing to write off the lack of production from Jaden Higgins from a market share perspective.
And let y'all know, Jalen Noel, I kept hearing his name at the Senior Bowl, so that draft capital probably go up.
If Jalen Noel is a wide receiver that earns significant NFL draft capital, where NFL talent evaluators are able to say, yeah, Noel has the talent where it makes sense why Jaden Higgins wasn't super productive, but that's going to be a big thing that we need to see. And also, if you go over and if you actually look at where Higgins is being drafted today in drafts, it is kind of funny that you can see where the redraft community has expectations with these guys. Jaden Higgins is wide receiver 78 in underdog drafts, where if you're looking at a bunch of other rookie wide receivers that are going ahead of him, you have Jalen Royals, you have Alec Arrowminer, you have Xavier Restrepo, you have Isaiah Bond, a couple of these wide receivers we're talking about later on. You have Trey Harris, you have Travis Hunter, you have Matthew Golden, talk about Golden later on as well. Of course, Morris, you have Luther Burden, and you have Tech McMillan, you have the studs. But really, he's being drafted about the wide receiver 7 or 8 if I'm looking at this in redraft leagues, but very low expectations going at the very end of these underdog drafts today. And I know it's crazy for us to be bringing up underdog drafts specifically in a dynasty video, but the main thing is I believe underdog's going to be the only reliable source that you can have for any type of price point on these guys whatsoever. Obviously, we can go through and we can look at, say, like the rankings and the draft guides that the guys over at Dynasty Land at Dynasty Domain, like you can see this profile from the Domain Dynasty Draft Guide on the site. You can check out their rankings and stuff, but really from a community perspective, the only thing that we have right now is going to be those underdog drafts that kicked off a couple weeks back. Moving over to Alec Arrowminer. This is a receiver that I'm actually a lot more concerned with, right? Because we can go through and we can make the argument for Jaden Higgins.
Oh, snap. Is this man going to say all this receivers like, nah, I'm against him on Jaden. I'll push back on Jaden Higgins. I like Jaden Higgins. Now, like I said, he's not going to get the draft capital, so probably going to be more down on him, but I like Jaden Higgins. But there is receivers I mentioned a number of times that I just looked at like, I don't know about that. And that has been Anna Manor, Selvin Williams. When I hear people high on Matthew Golden, I said it's about the right offense he goes to. So I'm only curious if he gonna mention these people that I mentioned. Here's one of them. So I love when people y'all listen to on the same page as me.
Higgins and a couple of these Texas guys we'll talk about later on. Oh, okay, well, he had competition at Iowa State. Maybe you actually see Jalen Noel turn into an NFL caliber receiver, and then the lack of production from Higgins isn't a super big deal. But if you go over and look at Alec, on the other hand, at Stanford, this is a receiver that comes through and really has no production whatsoever. I mean, if you're looking at his best season, not his career, if you're looking at his best season yards per route run, we're at 2.33. If you're looking at his best season targets per route run, we are at 29.5%. Now, if we go through and if we look at wide receivers that average fewer than 2.5 yards per route run in their best season, if we looked at wide receivers that averaged under 30% of their routes ending in targets, and they were drafted after pick 20, which this dude's not going to be around one NFL draft pick. You don't have to worry about that. Again, this is another list of almost exclusively bust. You have Laquan Treadwell, you have Ricky Pearsall, Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman, Jalen Polk, Jonathan Mingo, John Mechie, KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool, Tyquan Thornton, Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce, Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, Joshua Palmer. You have Nico Collins on this list, which obviously we can't say Nico Collins is a bust. Jalen McMillan, Miles Boykin, Michael Wilson, Antonio Callaway, and Amario Darboh. Now, if you want to come out here and say, oh, I actually like Jalen McMillan, you have to keep in mind with Jalen McMillan, he played at Washington with Rome Odunze, with Jalen Polk, right? Two quality NFL wide receiver talents. So here, I am going to be less likely to give him that type of benefit of the doubt because you're not playing alongside Rome Odunze. You're not playing alongside Jalen Polk in this offense. So I don't really see any reason to be interested in drafting him. If we go over and look at the current cost in underdog drafts, which again, this is going to be a redraft perspective, but gives us a sense on maybe what the cost will be in Dynasty. He's currently being drafted at about wide receiver 70, which if you're looking at that in comparison to the other rookie wide receivers, that's right after Isaiah Bond. That's right after Trey Harris, Travis Hunter. And then obviously you can get to the guys that are legitimately exciting, like Emeka Egbuka, Ted McMillan, et cetera, et cetera. But Trey Harris is an example. We're going to dive into him. The analytics absolutely love Trey Harris in comparison to what they do with these other options. But I know that Alec is getting a lot of hype around his potential NFL.
Hey, Trey Harris, my guy. And I'm just trying to draft him as much as best ball as I can right now, while I can draft him, because I'm going to be fighting with folks in dynasty drafts to draft him. So I already know I'm not going to be able to get him there.
Draft capital. Now, the two guys I really want to focus in on with this video are going to be the two Texas Longhorns that I had the pleasure of watching all year. You have Matthew Golden, who every mock draft I see, everybody's thinking, oh, this dude's going round 1 at Pittsburgh. All of a sudden, everybody's mocking him to go round 1 in the NFL draft. He is the film darling. You are going to hear everybody who grinds the tape, everybody who loves film, tell you 1,000 reasons why they like Matthew Golden. If you go over and look at the draft profile from the Domain Dynasty Draft Guide on the site, you'll see that his strengths are he's a good in contested catch situations. He has elite speed, could light it up at the combine, pretty good route running ability. His weaknesses, not a good analytical profile, inefficient, durability, health is a big concern, and not great in blocking situations. And yeah, one of those big weaknesses is the analytical profile, which is laughably bad. Okay, this is a receiver that played at Houston, right? Houston, not necessarily a super big school. You go back to 2022, they're the American Conference. Big 12 in 2023, but then he gets the SEC. He's playing with the big boys, hook 'em horns in 2024. Never hyper productive at Houston. His best season at Houston, 53 receiving yards per game. This past year at Texas, he's up at 61.7 receiving yards per game. He has 9 receiving touchdowns, but that's through 16 games played. And if we actually look at the advanced analytics behind this profile, you were looking at a receiver that only had 2.1 yards per route run in his best collegiate season. His best season, he only averaged 18.7% of his routes earning a target. And he doesn't break out until pretty much the end of his collegiate career. So if we go through and if we look at this, and obviously, we're going to move the thresholds up. We're not just going to say only prospects that were worse from him from these metrics. Instead of looking at receivers that were under 2.1 yards per route run, we're going to be looking at 2.3, et cetera, et cetera. Here's your list. You have Jahan Dotson, Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas, absolute smash. We'll talk about it in a second. Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Michael Pittman, Jalen Polk, Jonathan Mingo, Dante Pettis, Chase Claypool, Adonai Mitchell, Van Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Cedric Tillman, Joshua Palmer, Jermaine Burton, Amari Rogers, Devin Duvernay, Chris Moore, Des Fitzpatrick, Josh Reynolds, and Eric Anama. Now, here is the reason why we were willing to draft Brian Thomas last year, why the analytics, frankly, did not matter with Brian Thomas in the same way that they are going to with Matthew Golden. Brian Thomas played alongside Malik Neighbors, of course, and we said this at the time. Everybody knew this at the time. So this is the big issue that we have with people wanting to either only listen to analytics and go all in, or saying it's complete garbage because you see a wide receiver like Brian Thomas on this list. It always matters the context of the production of these guys, which is something that we've talked about for years, where you look at a player like Brian Thomas and we can immediately identify, oh, Malik Neighbors, top 10 NFL draft pick, phenomenal prospect in his own right. it makes sense for Brian Thomas to not have the production profile. It doesn't in this case for Matthew Golden. The other example that you can sit here is with Isaiah Bond, where also, the numbers are even worse. He's down at 2.02 yards per route run. This is Adonai Mitchell 2 years ago. This is why you cannot be drafting Adonai Mitchell, right? The comps look very, very similar.
I'm gonna be real with you. Isaiah Bond is definitely a limited receiver, but it's going to be what offense you drop him in. It's going to be about what offense you drop it in, but he's not going to be a fantasy needle mover. It's not going to happen. He could be perfect for best ball. He's going to be a field stretcher or someone. Once they get the ball, it's going to be hard to catch him. So he's going to have some spike games. So this is a late wide receiver that's good for best ball. But as far as an everyday start, he will not be him.
Similar, maybe a few names here are a little bit different when we are changing the thresholds a bit. But the big thing that you need to ask yourself, if you're buying into like this Matthew Golden hype, and I know somebody is going to come out here and make the argument, oh, Quinn Ewers is a bum. Everybody hates Ewers, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I understand. I'm not going to sit here and make an argument that Quinn Ewers is great, but that's why we don't just look at their yards per route run. This is why you also look at their targets per route run, because we've seen wide receivers absolutely dominate in offenses with garbage quarterback play, specifically from a target earning perspective. If you're in an offense with a bad quarterback, maybe the yards, maybe the touchdowns aren't there, but the targets will be because you will be open. If you're open, the quarterback's going to try to get you the ball no matter how bad they are. So this is the argument that people made with Adonai Mitchell, excusing the poor production last year. It's going to be the same thing that they do here because we've already seen it with Quinn Ewers. But again, Matthew Golden at 18.7% of his routes earning a target with, which is just laughably bad. And we don't see wide receivers come into the NFL with that college production profile, find success unless, and this is the big thing that you need to ask yourself, unless it's an AJ Brown and DK Metcalf situation, unless it's an Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry type situation, unless it's a Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas type situation. If you think that Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond were both that great, if they are going to be both top 12-ish NFL wide receivers, and that's why neither could be productive because they ate into each other, fine, draft them. If you think that Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel are that great, where they are both borderline round one NFL talents and they ate into each other, fine, draft them, ignore the analytics. However, if you don't think Jalen Noel is AJ Brown caliber, you can go through and you can look at other examples of this, right? You can go look at the Alabama guys with Jerry Jeudy, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't think Isaiah Bond is Odell Beckham Jr., and then all of a sudden Matthew Golden's Jarvis Landry, you probably shouldn't be drafting him. And of course, if you don't have any of those NFL caliber wide receivers in your same collegiate offense and you don't have the production, that's where you see the bust come from over and over and over again. So contextualize it. I think we're going to have a lot to learn about these offenses as the offseason progresses. But right now, I do want to put out that red flag. But I think that's all I got for you.
I know a lot of you guys are flockers. So he mentioned Higgins, which I disagree with. Higgins is good. I don't know if he'll produce year one, but I think he'll ultimately become a producer in this league. Now, I just don't think he's going to get the draft capital to get pushed to the forefront immediately. But the other three, I had questions about. I knew I wouldn't own any of them because people are drafting them over me. Now, Bond, like I said, I'm willing to draft him in best ball, but that's about it. Like, it's no reason for me to have Bond. He would have to go to like a great offensive minded coach that I feel like that would scheme him, manufacture touches, something like that. But Antimatter, I'm good. I don't want any Antimatter. Golden, the hype has left The hype has left the station. He has too much hype for me to own any of Golden. I was willing if he would go to a great offensive-minded coach that I know will scheme him open, or get him manufactured touches. But the hype on him have got too high that I'm not going to fight anyone in rookie drafts over Golden. I don't like him that much as a prospect. I just feel that's the landing spot he need to go to in order to be successful. You can't just drop him anywhere. But I feel like Higgins is going to be fine eventually. He's going to be fine no matter where you drop him at. Eventually, he's going to be fine. So I ain't going to keep you guys. Tell me your thoughts, what you think. Peace.